What's up? Welcome to El Big League Show. Big news today coming out of Arizona. The Diamondbacks have called up their number one prospect, top 10 prospect in all of baseball, Jordan Lawlar. Was he shortstop, second base, third base, whatever you call him? He is an elite prospect, an elite talent. And we're talking to someone who knows a little bit about elite talent. That is former MLB exec Adrian Lorenzo. Adrian, man, we profiled Jordan Lawlar on El Big League Show, which runs every week on this channel. And now we're going to see what he looks like at the big league level.
Really cool to have been able to spotlight him because he was performing and kind of felt like he was knocking on the door, to now actually getting the call just a couple weeks later. I'm hyped about this. I've liked Jordan Lawlar for quite a while here. He's somebody I remember very closely from the draft process. I didn't get to see him myself out of the draft, but talking to guys that have seen him, he was a guy that was worth considering making a significant run at in terms of dollars to see if he would intentionally slide down a few more picks. But Arizona, I think, wisely selected him where they did aggressively. And we're here talking about his promotion to the big league. So shout out to the scouting departments, especially the amateur scouting departments with the Arizona Diamondbacks to get him to this point. Also the player development to kind of tee it up so that he's able to be ready to be activated at this point. But what's interesting is how they're going to incorporate him here, because they have a pretty regular rotation of Pavin Smith, Ketel Marte, Raul Perdomo, and Eugenio Suarez that are all contributors, regardless of how it's going for them. Perdomo's going off. Ketel Marte again. Pavin Smith, really productive, especially against right-handed pitching, which is where they kind of platoon him almost exclusively. Naylor, there's not really a whole lot of room, even at the DH position, to accommodate, but they're making this decision anyway. That tells me that he's been beating down the door. There's only so much time you want to leave your top prospect dominating AAA without rewarding it with some kind of call-up. Now we're later enough into the year where you're not having to worry about other considerations and other implications from a service time standpoint. You're just kind of worried about staying alive in the NL West, because the NL West is really competitive right now. So I think this is a move more in the spirit of that. And you're injecting, hopefully it's an injection of adrenaline to a team that's not sliding, but like the Dodgers are really good right now. The Dodgers just kind of beat them pretty handily yesterday. So good on the Diamondbacks for doing this. What I like is that I think there's a spot for integration at different positions. I think if you look at it, like he's going to come in and play shortstop every day, or second base every day, or third base every day. That I think that's an inverted way to look at this, just because they have run producers at every spot. But if you play the platoons and he's a right-handed hitter, you have Pavin Smith on the left side, Josh Naylor on the left side. He can kind of find spots at first base or DH against left-handed pitching right away. Now, you can also make the argument that the other guys need a day, whether it be the veteran Eugenio Suarez or Ketel Marte. Like, you can give those guys a day and have Jordan Lawlar play one of second or third base. I wonder how much they've been doing of this in terms of spring training prep for different positions. You might come in the third base, you might come in at second. I'm betting they did a lot of that, because this was not a foreseeable problem, but you saw you had a blocked up infield and a top performing prospect going to AAA. So it's not out of bounds to think that this guy's going to impact you. But then he's got to actually go do it in AAA. And that's what I feel like he's done here. He's just dominated AAA, to a 992 OPS with power, with stolen bases, with position, like defensive versatility. So it's a shortstop showing versatility to play other places. That's what I see here. And I think it's coming at a good time for the Diamondbacks. I think they're not going to find too much trouble working him in, especially if he produces when he's in there.
Now we're talking about a guy who is jumping right into the absolute mix, right? This is high intensity division, team with a lot of expectations, team with veterans. This is not a 5'8" utility infielder, right? This is what they do, is play all over the diamond. This guy's a big athletic dude. Yep. So do you say, okay, we're going to put you where you're most comfortable, and maybe you'll play every day, or we're going to move you all over at the major league level? I know he did in the minors to get ready for this moment, but we're just going to put you where you fit in, and you'll learn that way. What's the best way to deal with a guy like this, who's not what you would consider a utility infielder by trade?
This is a tricky one. There's some nuance to it, and you have to handle it not delicately, because at the end of the day, I think Jordan Lawlar is a baseball player, can play multiple positions if need be, and just still be a productive bat. But you also don't want to put him in a position where he's underwater defensively anywhere. So you have to careful about overexposure to something that's clearly uncomfortable to him. But that's the conundrum that good teams find themselves in. Competitive teams, like, usually you're competitive because you have a pretty deep lineup without that many holes. And so but you also don't want a AAA prospect, top prospect, going to ride the bench and come in to pinch hit. So it's a fine balance. And that's why I think they've given him enough time in AAA for him to prove, like, okay, he doesn't belong at the AAA level. We need a little bit of a spark at the big league level. And I think this may help that. It may be a little bit defensively clunky if he's not playing his natural position right away. But I think if he's hitting, you put up with that and then some. You can't sacrifice offense completely at the expense of optimal defense, especially if you can defend late. Maybe he's out of position the first few innings. Righty comes in the game, and now you can go back to you can sub him in defensively. Or in a game that he's not playing, you can sub him into a spot defensively where he is a defensive asset or a base running asset like he is. There's ways to use him later in game, but I think if that was their thought, they wouldn't be calling him up. You want him to play. So I think they see rest for a different guy, a different veteran every day of the week, and that's the day that Jordan Lawlar plays at that position.
Talking to people that played in the minors and they were not top prospects, they always talk about, hey, the vibe of the game is weird because everybody's there to see a couple guys, and you're just sort of a stand-in if you're not that guy.
Yeah.
With Lawlar, he has been the reason people go to games, I got to think, for the last, 5 or 6 years.
Sure.
Now he goes to a team where his job is to do a small role to win a game, and his presence and his development is not the number one priority.
Sure. What's
that kind of mindset shift for a player like Lawlar, who, again, this is what he's been probably since high school. And now it's like, okay, now I'll go from everything's about me to everything's about this team, and I have to fit in where I fit in.
I think the gap from AAA to the big leagues in terms of quality of life, luxury of travel, city, rotation of road cities is just such a massive upgrade that I don't think any kid is going to care, at least not initially, in terms of where it fits. Like, just the call up to go to the big leagues is the dream. He's already been there. He got a little cup of coffee in 2023, so he's got some time, but everybody wants to be in the big leagues. You're not like, no, I'll ride it out in AAA a little longer until I have playing time in the big leagues. No, you'd rather go there. But then what you really got to do, what it puts a big emphasis on, if he's not going to play every day, puts a big emphasis on that hitting coach, on that positioning coach, to make sure he gets the reps in the non-game time, early work, before BP, during BP. You have to keep this guy major league ready, even if he's not getting major league reps while he's on the bench. Now, I don't know, knowing Mike Hazen and the rest of that group and Torey Lovello, like, they didn't bring him up to not play. Yeah. That's nice sense here. And so I think they feel he could be a necessary, shot of adrenaline to spark this team. And I hope it's that. I think it's got a good chance of being that, but you got to have spots for him to play every day. And I think that they're going to be able to work that in.
Kane's Cat Heat 305 has a question here, and it goes to something you talked about broadly, right? He's looking at the batting average in minor league baseball, his whole career, 300, propped up a lot by this AAA performance.
Yep.
You having been in front offices, how much just analytic work? I know that's not your background, but you're well versed in everything when you're an executive. That's part of the job. Translating minor league stats to projecting major league stats, figuring out, hey, AAA right now is pretty easy to hit. We can't, take these numbers and put them in context. How much of that, besides just, hey, we think he's going to be able to hit major league fastballs or whatever the physical scout is, how much of the minor league number scout and projection can you tell us about?
Yeah, first, I'd never say it's easy to hit in AAA. I think hitting in AAA is exceptionally difficult. That just shows you how exceptionally difficult hitting in the major leagues is, because there is a massive gap. But I think you can kind of dissect that down. Like, my eyes would go first to how's he performing against the fastball? How's he performing against upper end velocity fastball? If he's covering that in AAA, I think that's a good indicator. If he's making good swing decision and the chase percentages are controllable, that projects well in the big leagues. Cover the fastball. Don't chase the stuff out of the zone. and get on base. He's getting on base at like a 413 clip and 992 OPS. So he's getting on base, he's slugging, and he's got the batting average. So he's just he's dominating the level, which is what you want to see before a hitter graduates in the big leagues. I think that puts him in the best position. Now he's playing in Reno. The PCL is notoriously like the home run numbers could be kind of wonky and kind of throw you off in terms of, Davison De Los Santos was, experiencing a little bit of this last year. You're like, okay, yeah, but he's this many homers, but he's playing on the moon over there in Reno or in Albuquerque or in these places where the ball really jumps. But I think you can still dissect down, like, is he covering fastballs? Is he barreling fastballs down there? 95 plus fastballs? Okay. And then you can teams have the ability to go further. The Kinatrax, like the biomechanical markers, are they strong? Is even against high riding or high spinning fastballs that get good carry at the top of the zone, is he covering those? You can kind of go through almost like a major league readiness checklist. Not all of them will be checked, but if enough of the important ones are, you can feel better about how it's going to go. The ones I think were the highest range of volatility is when a hitter doesn't make good swing decisions. Those chase percentages can really go off the miss percentages, but especially the chase percentages, because those two things are linked. And it can go south on you quick if you already don't have that as a good base. He has that as a good base, and I think that bodes well.
Someone like this whose profile goes beyond just the hitting, there's a defensive component to it. There's an athleticism component. Is that stuff stickier when you're projecting to the major league level? Like, do you have a pretty good feel for, like, all right, we know how this guy can defend the position. We know how this guy can move, projecting him to dealing with major league body types and faster speed, everything else. Like, is that a lot easier to project than the hitting part?
I think so. I think it's a lot more straightforward, and I think you get a lot more chance to really, the ball is hit toward you defensively, and then you respond to that ball, but you're the aggressor in a lot of that engagement. On the hitting side, the pitcher controls the pace. So it's such a responsive position to something that's hard to do well against. Defensively, like a hard line drive in AAA at you or a sinking line drive, you've seen that a lot in the minor leagues as well. There may be some guys that hit it like, a Judge line drive or an Aaron Soto line, a Juan Soto line drive, that maybe the guy in AAA, it doesn't backspin over your head. But for the most part, you've seen a lot of those reps defensively. In the big leagues, hitting, there's a lot of shit you've never seen before. There's a lot of ways they attack you that you've never seen before. So hitting is harder. Defense is a little more straightforward, but it is sticky in terms of at the big league level, defense gets really magnified. You don't have to be an exceptional defender to stick in the big leagues, but it really sticks out when you're an outlier bad defender. So these late game mistakes can get magnified. Things defensively can get magnified at the big leagues. So more straightforward of an assessment than hitting, in my opinion, without question. But also, I don't know, it depends where you're playing, right? Like, there's guys, I remember Fenway, like playing third base at Fenway, the fans are like right up on you. Like, there's a little more, you're holding that ball a little tighter. Like, all of a sudden, like, the defensive comfort that you had shifts, especially if you're out of position, out of your natural position. So I don't think Jordan Lawlar is going to have a problem, but you can't not defend at the big league outside of the DH position. So even though hitting is the most important thing that got you there, the value establisher is going to be the fact that you can play defense at a high level and hit. That's where all the money is in the big leagues.
Do you see him as a major league average shortstop as far as the projection, or do you see him being better than that, just on the defensive side of the ball? Forget the hitting.
I think I'll set the expectation at average, but also setting an appreciation for what major league average is. And that's what scouting is all about, like setting what major league average is. And I think sometimes we say it and you kind of like, oh, major league average is just an average player. No, major league average is an everyday regular player in the major leagues, which is really fucking good. So saying major league average is not a slight on him at all. If you're doing that, that's really good. And then that speaks for the Geraldo Perdomos, who's like, playing in the 90th percentile, 90-some percentile defensively. That's an elite defender. So sometimes it's like you could be a good, solid shortstop defender, but the guy that's there is an elite level defender. So you're kind of going to have to play somewhere else. Because on any given day, that should be, and he's a left-handed hitter, Perdomo is, so he has the platoon advantage offensively as well. But I think it's it's where you want to be if you're Mike Hazen and the Diamondbacks, to have a top performing prospect knocking down the door at AAA to help your big league club. Like maybe that keeps you from making the deadline deal for a bat because you have the solution internally. That's optimal scenario without having to give anything up. Some teams have to like now give up 2 or 3 prospects to get the piece they need at the deadline. Maybe this is their solution and earlier than the deadline.
And we've seen young guys make a difference in the playoffs. I mean, think about Pena a couple of years ago. I mean, these guys can be difference makers if it clicks at the right time.
And I go back to the shot of adrenaline. Sometimes like the younger guys just give a jolt of energy to a club that's like, hey, we're already pretty good. We're just we're flat for whatever reason right now. And you get a top prospect come in and he does some things that more youthful players tend to do more often, base running stuff, like great plays. It can, the 2003 Marlins, for example, like when Miguel Cabrera gets inserted into that lineup, you take off. And I don't know that, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen here, but there's ways in which Dontrell Willis, you get like this injection of youth that kind of carries you. And they're not an old team, but playing in a rough division. Those Dodgers are good. The Padres are good. You know, the Giants we just talked about are good. So I think they need the help, and it's going to be welcome.
Listen, if you enjoy this content, like to hear about prospects, international guys, major leaguers from a scouting perspective, high level, like and subscribe to this channel, A Big League Show. We're on every Monday, plus instant reacting to news like this. So remember, like and subscribe. See you next time.